Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Fiddlesticks support and jungle. Starting off with support as it's the more cut and dry one. The keystone's going to be Aftershock, secondary is going to be Font of Life. The third rune, you have the option of conditioning or bone plating, most commonly bone plating, and then secondary is going to be this, that. Now going back with Aftershock, after you immobilize an enemy champion, this is going to be with your fear, you gain bonus armor and magic resist you increase your bonus armor and magic resist by 35, and then you gain an additional 80% on your bonus resistances. Through the support role, it's pretty important to be able to tank like as much damage as possible. In the laning phase, you might not get that much value out of Aftershock as you're going to be fearing the target that you would be probably taking damage from. But you're going to be negating the enemy's ability to like peel you off the enemy AD, because most commonly supports are going to be turning onto Fiddlesticks as he's engaging, because he usually commits himself forward. And then if you're in a 2v3 scenario or a 3v3 scenario, you're going to be getting more stats from the Aftershock, as you're going to be negating damage from either the enemy ADC, the support, or the jungler. And then come team fights, you're going to be negating enemy damage from like all 5 champions. So that's basically why you run Aftershocks, just for the free stats. And your itemization helps it scale, but it's not required for it. So if you're building Zanyas, you're going to be getting more armor from it. And then if you build Zeeks, you can get the double resistances from it. For the secondary rune, it's going to be Font of Life. You can run Demolish if you have a naturally winning lane, but Font of Life is going to generally give you more usefulness out of it, because your AD is going to be healing off your one fear, and then if you end up getting 2 fears off in the team fight, it's going to be giving you okay value there. But if you're trying to win lane, Demolish is completely fine, as you're going to be able to get the turret plating just faster. And then throughout the rest of the game, the extra damage to the tower is kind of whatever. It's mostly just for the turret plating in the laning phase, and then like an extra reward for killing your lane in the first place. For the third rune, like I said, your good options are conditioning and then bone plating. In most lanes, it's going to be bone plating, as it effectively just gives you more health. After you take damage from an enemy champion, your next 3 spells or attacks you receive from them deal 30 to 60% less, or 30 to 60 damage less. And this is on a 40-second cooldown. And then the amount of damage that it blocks is based on your level. So the way that Fiddlesticks uses this is whenever you actually move on to the enemy, then when they try to turn onto you, then that's when you effectively just have more HP because of it. Since you're like primarily backline, like spamming the E on the wave, the cooldown of this isn't as significant as it is on other supports. And just like the dynamic that Fiddlesticks plays with in the support role, the cooldown isn't that bad, even though it's on 45 seconds, it's still, you're probably going to have it up for every single fight that you would be taking it, unless you're trading like out of line. And in those timings that you'd be trading out of line too, it's just not good anyway, so it also promotes proper play. With the conditioning, after 10 minutes, you gain +9 armor and magic resist, and then you increase your armor and magic resist by 5%. This has pretty good synergy with Aftershock, as itemizing both armor and magic resist can be kind of hard on Fiddlesticks support, especially depending on your income, but this kind of offsets that. And in matchups in which you don't interact with the enemy laner that much, and you wouldn't need the effective health from bone plating, conditioning is going to be more valuable just past 10 minutes and onwards. With Overgrowth, you absorb life essence from monsters or enemy minions that die near you. You permanently increase your health by 3 for every 8. And when you've absorbed 120 monsters or minions, you gain an additional 3.5% maximum health. This effectively just gives you like a ruby crystal for free, and that's like pretty good. Having like around 130 HP come mid game extra is, you just have more to play with in the support role. And you're primarily spending your HP for your cooldowns as Fiddlesticks support. With perfect timing, it has pretty obvious synergy with Fiddlesticks. You start the game with a stopwatch that you can use at 10 minutes, and then this helps you, it reduces your cost into Zanyas. Having the one-time stopwatch makes your all-ins around like post level 6 just more easier. It makes it easier as you have the Zanyas to survive as you go in. So you go in, you fear, you have the Aftershock proc, you're taking less damage. After that expires, if the enemy tries to turn on you there, you can dodge skill shots, just negate their like incoming auto attacks and etc. You just dodge a lot of damage with perfect timing, and then it gives you the better itemization into Zanyas if you're winning. And then Biscuit delivery is kind of required on Fiddle, as you don't have any good itemization into mana for him. So with Biscuit delivery, you receive a Biscuit every 2 minutes until 6, and then the Biscuits restore 10% of your missing health and mana. And the laning phase, after you've spammed your E until you're literally out of mana, whenever you use a biscuit, it's gonna restore more mana depending on how low you are on mana. So once you literally exhaust all the mana you can, then you use the biscuit, and then you have either one more E cast or enough mana to cast E and Q, and then you have an all-in from there as you've poked down the enemy with the E throughout the laning phase. And then whenever you use a biscuit or sell them, you permanently increase your mana by 50. So this gives you 200 mana, and then if you end up selling them, it offsets the cost of a control ward. And if you end up using them in the laning phase, it's just going to give you the value there. For the adaptive runes, it's pretty standard. You go adaptive force, and armor. Cooldown reduction is kind of enticing, but since you don't get as many levels, you lose a good amount of value from this rune, as it's a scaling rune, giving you 1% to 10, and that's 1% at level 1, 10% at level 18, so you're basically never going to get there. You could sit on like 4% from it at level 9, but to choose that scaling over the extra damage you would deal from the ability power, especially where your primary source of usefulness in the laning phase is spamming E and dealing more damage with it, then yeah, having the extra ability power just gives you more damage on that, and it gives you more damage on an all-in as well. You'd run armor as you're playing in a duo lane bot lane. You're going to be negating damage from minions, the auto attacks from 2 champions, and then obviously the damage from an enemy AD carry, and even tower damage. So just being able to tank more makes you more useful. So these would be the default runes I'd recommend for Fiddlesticks support. Not so crazy, as you need to block a lot of damage, and then you gain your usefulness through surviving longer to get multiple rotations of your Q and E off, along with, because you get your damage through your abilities on Fiddlesticks support. It's not so much about all-inning it with the runes. So that's that. For the secondary runes, you could have the variation of like Nimbus Cloak Celerity or even Nimbus Cloak Scorch, but the Scorch damage isn't so useful, as the damage that you're dealing with the E is fine. To add to that doesn't outweigh the perfect timing in biscuits, because if you're running something secondary other than these, you have to be outweighing them. So the perfect timing has basically as much value as Nimbus Cloak, and then biscuits beats celerity in my opinion. Nimbus Cloak, whenever you cast a summoner spell, you gain bonus movement speed based on the cooldown of the summoner spell. So with your ignite, it's going to give you a little bit, and then with flash, it's going to give you more. But to stay on top of a target as Fiddlesticks isn't so important, especially whenever you're on them. You're probably standing still because you probably ult, flash Q, W, and then you're waiting for your E. So having the extra movement speed after that isn't so useful. And then with celerity is kind of useful, as you make better use out of Fiddlesticks passive, but again, it's mostly about how you flash engage on Fiddlesticks support, not so much getting the extra movement speed once you're on top of them. Other champions just do that better. So these would be the default runes I'd recommend for Fiddlesticks support. Now moving on to jungle, it changes a bit, as the primary keystone you want to run is Electrocute. You have the option of either Predator or Dark Harvest, but with Electrocute, it's your more consistent option. Electrocute is going to give you the damage to actually kill someone when you gank them, and pretty similar to Evelyn, if you just simply don't have this damage, then you're just missing out on like a lethal that you would have otherwise had. With Predator, it's kind of a snowbally thing where you can gank one lane, and then you can use the Predator and run into the next lane, and then that's that. You can just kind of be permanently ganking with Predator, but that's effectively like a cheese solution, as it's not guaranteed to work, and then when it does, you've cheesed anyways. With Dark Harvest is definitely your better scaling option, but it would probably be better at higher MMRs, where it's the soul, like all the lanes are fine for you to full clear, and if you were to enter the mid game level 11 with Dark Harvest, your ults and team fights would just be more impactful, as you could constantly be proccing it. And then missing out on the extra damage from ganks wouldn't matter, as you would only have so many ganks anyways. But defaultly in solo queue, Electrocute is going to be giving you more value, because again, your ganks are actually going to be lethal. And then for the second rune, it's going to be Cheap Shot. Sudden Impact might seem enticing, as you gain the bonus magic penetration whenever you flash or ult, but in the jungle role, you have lots of ways to proc Cheap Shot. You have your auto attack with red buff, you have blue smite, you have Fiddlesticks Q, you have Fiddlesticks' silence. I'm pretty sure that procs Cheap Shot. So you have lots of ways to proc this, and you could even proc it twice in a gank. With Cheap Shot, damaging a champion with impaired movement or actions deals 10 to 45 based on your level, bonus true damage against them. And then this is only on a 4-second cooldown, so it's very easy to actually get off multiple times in a skirmish. And you can also proc it against multiple champions, pretty consistently in a skirmish as well. So that just adds more damage to what you would already be doing in a gank. So you show up fear, W, and then E, or you ult over, and then it's ult, fear, E, W, etc. Just have lots of ways to proc it. And then for the secondary rune, or for the third rune, you're basically choosing like how you earned your 30 ability power from these. With Zombie Ward, you gain it from sweeping enemy wards. With Ghost Portal, you gain it through placing wards. With Eyeball Collection, you gain it through getting kills or assist. So, depending on how you're trying to play, I think Zombie Ward or Eyeball Collection is your best bet. If you're trying to go for consistency, Zombie Ward is going to be your best, as you're constantly moving around the map and sweeping wards, especially come mid game. You're usually just full clearing and then trying to set up for ults over walls, and it's very common. Like, people have gotten good enough to ward out like areas that Fiddlesticks would ult from, commonly places like Raptors or left or right side mid. So being able to get a reward for sweeping those, even though you're not getting an ult off, is pretty nice, and it has pretty good synergy with just a ganking jungler in general. With Eyeball Collection, it's going to be less consistent, but it gives you better snowball potential, as you can be building up the ability power you earn from it faster. But again, it's just going to be more inconsistent. And then for the fourth rune, you have okay options in Relentless Hunter or Ultimate Hunter. I think Ultimate Hunter's your more consistent bet, as Fiddlesticks is so reliant on his ult that, and it's on a pretty significant cooldown, that having even just the 5% from this, even when it's not stacked up, is pretty solid. Relentless Hunter, giving you more out of combat movement speed, is useful. So if you would rather have better ganks to side lanes, that's when you would want to run Relentless Hunter. But in a lot of cases, you're better off just full clearing on Fiddlesticks, because he does benefit very well from farm, and then having the ult up more often means that you have more effective ganks versus showing up to lanes just at random times. And then for secondary runes, your options in the sorcery tree are better in the jungle with Nimbus Cloak, either Nimbus Cloak Gathering Storm, Nimbus Cloak Celerity, or Nimbus Cloak Water Walking. As with Nimbus Cloak in the jungle role, it does make more sense, as you're blue smiting someone, they're going to get less movement speed, and then you're going to get more movement speed towards them. You don't even have to fear them initially. You can enter the lane without ult, right? You enter the lane, blue smite, and then you can approach EW, and then either fear them at the end of it, or blue smite them, approach them, E auto, and then QW. You have the electric Q proc, you just have more damage. You potentially have 2 cheap shot procs from that, and yeah, the extra movement speed gives you a lot more utility. If you're getting invaded too, Nimbus Cloak is also a pretty good defensive tool, as whenever you fear someone, you don't necessarily get away as Fiddlesticks jungle. You fear a Lee Sin, he simply ward hop Qs you, and then that's that. But if you have Blue Smite, it gives you a lot more wiggle room, as you can just run out of your jungle or run away like from the enemy jungler trying to attack you. And then with Celerity, you're going to be getting better bonuses, as whenever you're moving around the map, you just effectively have more movement speed. But I don't really prefer that. If you're going to run the sorcery tree, I think you're better off going Gathering Storm. With Gathering Storm, you're going to get 24 AP at 20 minutes, and that's basically what you're going to be playing around with, and that's completely fine, as Fiddlesticks' build spikes pretty early, and you're basically just playing for your level 11 anyways. So that versus Absolute Focus, where you have to get the ability power through your levels, and again, where jungle caps out at levels come mid game, you just lose a bit of value. You would have more ability power from minutes like, let's say, 14 to 18, but after that, Gathering Storm would be beating Absolute Focus and ability power. And then with Water Walking, Fiddlesticks is more of a like ganking or full clearing jungler, not like a champion that benefits from always playing around objectives, and when he is, the ult is going to give you enough impact. You really don't need the extra movement speed or the adaptive force offered when you're in the river from this. And then with Gathering Storm, you're going to be getting, or past 20 minutes, you're going to be getting about the same amount of ability power offered. But even when you're not in the river, you're going to have it. So makes things just easier in solo queue for sure. You could also run Free Boots and Cosmic Insight. You could also run Perfect Timing and Cosmic Insight. The Cosmic Insight is going to help you get 2 rotations of your E off in the early clears, and then Free Boots is just going to offset the cost of Sworkman Boots. But defaultly, I would run Nimbus Cloak and Gathering Storm. And then the secondary runes wouldn't really change. If you were playing to farm, running the cooldown reduction's fine in the jungle role, as it lets you, again, just get 2 rotations of your E off, and that's usually what's gating you from like clearing a camp. But defaultly running the double adaptive force is fine. You can even get away with scaling health or magic resist depending on your matchups in the jungle. So Fiddlesticks is a really unique champion in the jungle, and the different ways you can get value out of his runes is really, really weird and subtle. So yeah, those are the only runes I think that I really need to mention. Yeah, so if this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. Twitch.tv/SawyerNelson. I'll be talking about League of Legends there. Might be playing some Fiddlestick support, but his time has come. If I see a Yumi though, bet, dude, I'm killing that champion every single time. Flash Fear, it's not even fair already. Bye bye. See you later.